What a Strange Little Colt. Written by Linwood. Chapter 9. Leaps and Bounds, Part 1. Friday. Twilight Sparkle perked up from her breakfast the moment she heard the heavy hoof knocking on the library's front door. "Spank?" she called as she flipped to the next page of the textbook open before her, careful not to dirty it with crumbs from her toast. "Can you get that, please?" "I'm on it," Spike called almost immediately. Twilight's attention was pulled back to the book in front of her. Anima Thaumaturgia, roughly translated, soul magic. The field of study, if it could be thought of as one, was not unknown to Twilight. She had briefly been taught about it at the school for gifted unicorns by a rapidly aging professor who frequently forgot to bring his material bags to class. Only one day's time had been spent on the subject, and it was mainly to detail its brief history and explain how it was one of the extinct practices of magic. Twilight took a bite of her breakfast as she examined the current page. It displayed a primitive, unbalanced-looking casting circle for a spell that was supposedly able to project one's soul out of one's body. The problem, the book helpfully provided, is the spell had no way to return the soul to the body, making the spell little more than a one-way ticket to an early grave. "Twilight!" shouted Spike from the main room. "It's that stallion from the letter." Twilight's ears perked up and she nearly fell out of her chair, hurrying to the entrance. The stallion from the letter stood just past the front door, looking around at her library. His coat was a smooth newspaper white and contrasted cleanly with his deep black mane. Both came together to make his thoughtful golden eyes stand out with an eye-catching manner that had drawn so many hopeful mares back in school, and they lit up when they met her own. "Twilight Sparkle, I knew I was coming to meet you, but my goodness, it's strange to see you again." Twilight smiled back. "I could say the same thing about you. It's been, what, how many years?" He chuckled. "More than I can count." Spike stretched and made for the stairs. "I'm gonna go find Pee-wee, Twilight. Holler if you need me." "Thank you, Spike." The librarian turned back to a new arrival. "Don't just stand there. Come on in." The stallion nodded his thanks when Twilight levitated his two considerably sized suitcases in, setting them beside the staircase. Custom made, she noticed, embossed with his cutie mark, a magnifying glass over a closed book. "So," she began, making her way towards the table. "I hear congratulations are in order, Investigator Looking Glass." The stallion rubbed his cheeks and produced a somewhat confident smile. "Oh, yes. The princess told you, I take it." "Of course. That's something to be proud of, isn't it?" "Well, yes, definitely." His smile grew a little. "The status upgrade is a boon in Canterlot. You know how it is. And the pay doesn't hurt either." Then it fell. "The title comes with a great deal of pressure, though. And with this new case, you can imagine the demand to provide results is, well..." Looking gulped. "I don't fancy my chances of remaining an investigator if I don't meet the challenge." "My goodness." Twilight cringed inwardly. She knew exactly what that kind of pressure was like. "Well, you're here now," she said with a reassuring as tone as she could. "And I know you'll do your best. You weren't exactly one for half measures at school." Her smile grew a little more devious. "Remember that time in the gardens with that mare from transmutation class?" The light gray coat of his mane grew a few shades redder. "Now, I don't think we need to go over that particular event," he sputtered. Twilight covered her giggle with a huff. "So, what's your plan?" He coughed and cleared his throat. "Yes, well..." His horn glimmered and his saddlebags unlatched themselves, floating over the main room's table and producing a small stack of mismatching papers. They shuffled as the investigator examined them with nearly crossed eyes, one by one before he plucked a piece from the pile, which set itself down on the floor. Then Looking Glass unfolded the paper with a bit of a flourish, revealing a map of Ponyville and the surrounding countryside. "The Bureau's been in close contact with Princess Celestia on this one." He began sounding far more professional. "After a lot of careful deliberation, our ponies determined the... He bit his lip. "I know I probably don't need to ask you of all ponies, but How well read are you on soul magic? Twilight gestured to anima thaumaturgia.
I've been studying this since I got it a week or so ago. The princess sent some other materials, but they're mostly just primary sources and codices. That text is pretty definitive.
The stallion hummed. Can you sum up a general understanding for me? I'm going to need to know if there are any gaps in your knowledge.
Of course.
Twilight pulled up a chair for looking, and the two sat down.
The writing is pretty dry, but it starts with soul magic's origins. We've known since antiquity that beings are made up of 3 distinct parts: mind, body, and soul.
She flipped open the corresponding chapter and tapped an old-looking print of a unicorn with a hoof.
One of Star Sword's later students theorized that manipulation of the most interior, most delicate magic of a pony's being could be a pathway to amazing powers, like immortality, and truly bringing back the dead.
Lucky nodded. If I recall, the rest of the historical section is a long list of the horrible things that happened to ponies that actually tried it, correct? Twilight grimaced.
Yes. It says that if you were lucky, you got cursed with pallid, sickly bodies or dull, slow minds. The rest is mutations, corruptions, and horrors galore.
She shivered a little.
After reading the descriptions, I had to take a break and switch to another text for a while.
Stallion chuckled a little. Well, you shouldn't be alone there. Golden Aura goes into frankly excruciating detail.
Yes, I thought that was a little overboard.
Twilight said with a weak smile of her own.
But what bothered me most was the entries about the ponies who initially appeared to be unscathed by the magic.
She trailed off, looking at it again. Only to commit unthinkable evil deeds, or transform into something otherworldly, because the thing that got returned to the body wasn't the soul that left it. His horn shimmered with golden light, and the text flipped open to Twilight's least favorite chapter, and he spoke in a low voice. Interlopers. Twilight frowned.
The illustrations are clearly a step too far.
You should see the unedited version we have at the Burrow, Looking said with a grin. Twilight turned a little green at the thought before shaking her head.
Moving right along, things like that are the reasons soul magic is no longer practiced or even legally allowed. It's so easy to bungle up, and the consequences are enormous, dangerous, and usually permanent.
She flipped a couple of more pages.
Here's a list of ponies whose souls were completely or partially repaired,
She said. It was 5 entries long. Yes, soul magic certainly has quite the track record. Looking raised his eyes to meet hers. However, that's not the most important thing to remember. Do you know what it is, Twilight? She blinked and an embarrassed heat immediately began to spread across her face.
Well, you see, it depends on how you look at it.
Hey, relax. Don't worry. Looking raised a calming huff. It wasn't a quiz. His horn glowed again as he flipped the text back to the theoretical section. As anima thaumaturgia so carefully states, those theories of soul magic's potential benefits haven't actually been disproven. Twilight nodded along as he spoke.
That's what makes it so tempting,
She thought. They are still theoretically possible. Looking continued. But even the most skilled, powerful ponies haven't produced solely positive results. The most notable example is actually Princess Luna herself, you know. She used soul magic to successfully empower her own being, but gained a stowaway in the process. She chuckled awkwardly.
We all know how that one ended.
Altogether, it painted a very concerning picture of what happened in Canterlot. Yes, we certainly do. Looking Glass nodded. Well, it seems that your study habits haven't changed a bit. Always the perfect student, huh? She blushed a little.
Well, I do try.
Just like old times, he said with a small smile. So how much do you know about the incident? Twilight shook her head.
Just that there was one, and it involved soul magic.
I'll bring you to speed then. His mouth thinned into a line. Last week, A currently unknown unicorn attempted to perform an unknown soul magic spell and failed spectacularly. Luckily, no pony we know of was hurt, and Canterlot got to experience a rather surprising light show early that morning. The line drooped at its corners. Unfortunately, the spell discharged several bound auras. Most of them were small, and we were able to track them to sites in and around Canterlot, but the largest had a lot more power behind it, and manifested all the way out in Ponyville.
Wait,
Twilight couldn't help but interrupt.
how do you know it was soul magic? Couldn't these auras be harmless?
If we knew that for sure, Sparkle, I wouldn't be here. He sighed. The royal guard provided us with photographs of the site, and the circle matched the designs in many of the old texts. Here, take a look. He levitated the picture out of his saddlebag, showing Twilight a casting circle that looked related to one that she had been examining in Anima Thaumaturgia not 5 minutes ago, but far, far more complex.
I guess extinct is too strong of a word. Wait,
Twilight said, examining the photograph.
are these necromantic runes?
I'm afraid so. Looking's frown deepened. As you likely know, the circle's base structure is unique to soul magic, but contains runes from other schools, many of them similarly outlawed.
Oh, good.
Twilight thought.
A smorgasbord of illegal magic. What the hell was the caster thinking?
We've still got mages trying to decode the spell's exact purpose, but, well, without access to the caster, or any additional knowledge, that may take a while. Which brings me to my second point. Looking Glass retrieved a pen and returned to the map. After a lot of talking and not a lot of doing, the ponies of the bureau determined that, based on the miasma it left behind, the aura probably landed in this area. He drew a generous oval on the outskirts of the town. We think that the reason it had so much power behind it is that it was carrying a living thing. Probably the pony that cast the spell, or, in all likelihood, the creature that they became.
So, you think that area is the best place to look for clues?
He nodded and tapped the circle area with a hoof. Unfortunately, yes. Twilight stared at the map for a little while, her head filled with scenarios of an eldritch beast that used to be a unicorn stampeding out of the Everfree Forest towards Ponyville. She let out a long whistle.
That's quite a bit to take in at once.
The investigator let out a sheepish chuckle. I know that it's a lot. I had the same look on my face when they told me, and a considerably more terrified one, when they told me the Ponyville investigation was my responsibility. I nearly passed out when they said I'd be joining forces with no pony less than the princess's personal student to do so. He said it with a grin, and though she blushed, Twilight pushed past the compliment.
It's also a bit of ground to cover.
Twilight said, tracing the area with a huff.
And we're gonna have to use some pretty sophisticated scanning spells. It's been a week, so any signatures the aura left behind will be badly faded.
Well then, he said, giving her a winning smile. We had better get started.
Holy freak, girls. This is ridiculously heavy. Are we gonna be building with cinder blocks?
Sweetie Belle giggled at the back of the wagon.
We're pushing as hard as we can. Come on, you big strong stallion. You can do it.
The groaning stopped and Gabe came trotting around the rear a moment later, giving the other Crusaders a raised eyebrow.
Yeah, looks like it's really taking it out of ya. Doy.
Scootaloo said, grinning.
Why do you think we're up here?
Bloom snorted.
Didn't you notice it's stuck?
The little green colt rolled his eyes and the fillies hopped out of the cart, the satisfaction of a prank well executed putting a little bounce in their step. Gabriel gave the other foals a sharp look before returning to the front of the cart to re-hitch himself, pausing below the shade of one of Sweet Apple Acre's many, many trees.
Y'all ready to skedaddle?
Came a call from the farmhouse.
Yeah, come on.
Apple Bloom hollered. All three of her fellow Crusaders slammed their hose over their ears and winced at the shrill, piercing shriek.
Jeez, Bloom.
Scootaloo slowly removed her hose from her ears.
Give us a warning next time, will ya?
The filly blushed as her saddle-bagged older sister trotted out to join the three under the hot afternoon sun. The air felt pretty dry now that all the moisture was rolling around in the growing thunderstorm outside of town. The clouds looked fit to burst.
And you sure you got everything?
Yep.
Sweetie Belle pointed to the bed on the medium-sized cart. The four foals had haphazardly stacked a multitude of wood, nails, screwdrivers, rope, and a bunch of other building supplies she didn't know the names for, but Apple Bloom and Scootaloo had insisted they were important. Gabe had nodded along without saying anything.
Alright,
Object said, nodding at the road.
let's get going then.
Expect another 3 uploads within the next 3 days. I'm really trying to push to get my series back up, mainly because I've been taking 2 or 3 days to produce a 40-minute video, so I'm going to try to lower it back down to my 20-15-minute marks. Expect more of that. I'm hoping for more consistent uploads. I'm really hating leaving you guys stranded on a video for 2 weeks again. Well, we're close to finishing multiple series, so I'm excited for that. However, I'm also excited to thank my wonderful Patreons. Thank you, Chase Lemaster, Jason, Squall, Windfeather, Luna Gaze, 8th Day of Night, Starlight Blaze, Hyperlink, Night and Game, Rainflicker, Redeemer of Dark, and Dreamless Portal. My Tier 2s, Captain Blueshadow, The Animated Ghost, HK4, aka Texture, Sword Brother and Mordred, Danish Dash, Nocturne, DJMX 2000, Papa Leonard, and Canned Panzer. And of course a large thank you to my Titan tiers, Dark Guardian, Maverick, and Silent Titan. I appreciate you guys' support so much and it means a ton to me. That aside, however, this has been Firehearth. Have a wonderful day.